Hey, what's up, guys? JB here. Welcome back to Future Look. And over on the JP side, they recently went through an anniversary period that kicked off with the Final Fantasy V event that we have here in Global right now. And that did continue on with some anniversary characters that did kind of go back to a special moment between Jayden and Alaya and their wedding. And today we're going to be kicking that off with celebratory Jayden, groom Jayden, anniversary Jayden, whatever you want to call him. Of course, he has been very popular here on the Global side, and we did even get a summer version of him last year. And it turns out that due to this global schedule crunch, we're going to be seeing this unit much sooner than later. But what exactly does this new version bring to the table other than being yet another 100 cost ice unit? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be looking at today with a deep dive review of his kit to see exactly what he can do. So with that said, let's get started. So Jayden is going to be a 100 cost ice unit. He has base 3-1 movement and he can wear hats and cloth. Starting with the TMR, this one is his crown and it is an accessory. Pretty nice effect actually on this one with the whopping 60% AoE magic effect. That's going to be the highest AoE magic up effect that we've seen coming in on a TMR to this date. So I think that could be pretty nice for some units who maybe don't bring this sort of buff natively, but actually maybe a pretty good PvE item as well. All right, moving on to the stats here next. And we have seen some statistical monsters come through the game, since the 3rd anniversary. You think about units like Sephiroth, Ferris, and even Bradley. But as you can see here in the graphs, Jayden is sort of kind of in line with the UR average in almost every statistical category. He does have an impressive innate magic total there at 591, which will land him just inside the top 20 there. Aside from that, though, there's really not a ton to write home about here. And certainly the agility value there is a bit concerning coming in at a below average level. He will end up okay in that category, though. He does have not one, but actually 2 different agility passives that you can equip on him if you need it. You can also see that the accuracy there again is coming in at a below average level. Unfortunately, he doesn't really have any passives there that can help him out though. So I think this could definitely be a bit of a pain point, when it comes to this unit, but let's see how it plays out there with the rest of his kit as we go through. For mitigation, Jayden is going to be starting out with 6 defense, 0 spirits. His resistances though, he's going to have a hefty 20% against slash and then 15% to both pierce and missile. So definitely 3 nice strengths there. He's going to be coming in though with 2 different weaknesses here. He's going to have a 5% weakness against strike and then a 10% against magic. So there certainly haven't been all that many units coming into the game as of late that have 2 different weaknesses, but Jayden will have a couple of different ways that you can get at him here. Now for a mastery ability, we're going to be looking at a 20% magic, which was factored into that total above, and then a 10% spirit penetration. Definitely nothing crazy here, but just a little bit of offensive punch. When you do take him all the way up to level 140, he's going to pick up a 15% area resist, which is quite nice, and then a 15 to his accuracy. Now that accuracy was also factored into that total that we looked at, and really that is only having him sort of keep pace with the UR average when we do factor in masteries and passives. So certainly he could be in much worse shape if he didn't have this, so it is certainly welcome. Now last but not least, he is getting a skill upgrade, and it's going to be to one of his main buffs, and we'll look at that here in the skills overview in just a moment. Now in terms of reincarnation, Jayden will be tagged as a magical attacker, so his reincarnation stats are going to be heavily favored towards that magic value, getting up to a total of 180. So you could certainly add quite a bit of firepower here if you were interested in investing in this unit further. All right, moving right on to the passive abilities and counters. As is custom here, passive 1 is going to be the highlight. This one is going to get an EX upgrade, which you can see here. It's getting 4 nice effects, 24% magic, 12% agility, 10% all element resistance, and then that 20 crit evasion. So this is a really solid passive all around. In lieu of getting something like additional area resist here on the passive, he is getting that all elemental resistance. And apples to apples, I think it is actually better since it will mitigate both unit and area attacks, assuming that they are elemental in nature. The crit evasion there is going to be a significant bump as well. It's going to definitely help out his survivability, so he will not be an easy unit at all to crit, assuming that you do lean into that and build it up a bit further. Now in terms of the other passives here, here. He's got quite a few nice ones. I think in most cases, though, I would probably use option 2. It's kind of the best all-around pick, I think, since, it's going to be his major source of spirit penetration. He doesn't get any other way to bump that up, within his abilities, so I do think it is a pretty important one for him. Now, if you were able to find some other ways to get that onto him, he does have a second agility passive that we mentioned that, you could really speed him up, getting a total of 24% agility onto his base. I also really like option 3 for certain maps or strategies, particularly manual play, as that passive does enhance 2 of his main attacking skills and gives them an additional range. For Jayden's counter abilities, I'm really not a huge fan of the new one that they've given him for his unique job. It is retaliation based and it is somewhat limited in its targeting pattern. He does have a couple of other decent options here though from his subjobs. He gets that large area resist buff that comes in from Grimoire Keeper, or Counter Cure from Cleric, which I think is one that I would probably use in most cases. Alright guys, let's move into the main kit here next, and we're going to start with his buffs. The first one is going to be that self buff of 40% magic, 50% debuff weakening, something that we've seen come in on a couple of recent units here on global like Rain and Dialdo. It is also going to restore a flat 15 AP on use. Now Jayden, despite being a magical skilled attacker, he doesn't start off with a large AP bank like most others, and in fact he's going to be right in line with physical units, starting out with just an 18% of his AP bank. Now the second one here is going to be a party buff. It's coming in with a whopping 4 different effects here. First, he will apply a barrier onto himself, and this is a skill that does get upgraded at level 140, taking it up to a whopping 10,000 hit point barrier. That is the largest that we've ever seen so far in the game, so it certainly sounds very impressive. And against units who don't have any way of breaking that barrier, it's certainly going to be very difficult to overcome. Now the party portion of the buff here is going to be that 25% to unit resist as well as slash resist. And this is actually fairly unique in the game. We really haven't seen all that many units who are able to party buff that unit resistance. And I think that this is going to have a lot of value as we go forward, as more and more units are getting those select 2 or select 3 attacks. Bridal Alaya certainly chief among them. Now last but not least on this buff, it does provide a passive effect onto Jayden's attacks, and it will reduce the slash res penetration of his targets by 30%. So this is similar here to some of that utility that we've seen come in on the ice element with Heaven's Blade Howlet. I think though that out of all of these sort of debuffs that I've seen, this one is probably my favorite, just because it will apply to each and every one of his attacks for those 3 turns. Meaning that there's a much greater chance that he's going to get this out and apply this onto the enemy, or maybe even multiple enemies. Moving into the core skills now, his low AP attack is going to be a straight line, range 2, range height of 1. It's going to have that standard low 121% mod. This one is a piercing attack, meaning that it can hit multiple units here in a line while being checked against their unit resistance. We do also have a little bit of utility coming in pre-damage, and that is going to be a re-raise Dispel. So that utility is always nice to have and could make a great partner for Reagan, who does bring in that Courage Dispel effect. Now skill number 2 is going to be that large diamond AoE, topping out at that range of 5. It will get up to a range height of 3 as well on the area of effect. This one is a 2-hit attack and it's carrying a medium 165 mod. There's going to be one effect here post damage, and it will reduce the healing power of your targets by 50. A couple of other interesting and unique attributes about this skill. This one is an arcing attack, meaning that it will pick up additional range, if you are at a higher range height than your opponent. And with that passive that we did touch on in the last section, this skill can add an additional range there, putting it up to a base range of 6, which is very, very nice. Now skill number 3 here is going to be a range of 4, range height of 2, and again is a 2-hit attack with that medium 165% mod. This one is going to break magic barriers prior to the damage, and then post damage it does set enemy hate down to 0. And just like that last one, you can also increase the range there with that passive ability. So when Jayden was first unveiled over in JP, this is a skill that a lot of people talked about. It's very unique. It's the only one of its type in the game. And I think you can certainly come up with some very nice strategies focused around this skill for auto play. And I do think that the existence of this skill, it at least gives some potential check against powerful innate hate tanks like Raph and others, and certainly increases the value of hate down effects for your other units as well. Now the final skill here is going to be a range of 3 with a range height of 1. It's coming in with that large 200% modifier. This one is again a piercing style attack. We have just a single effect coming in on this one, and that's when Jayden crits. This will restore 25% of his HP pool. Now we did see there in the stats overview that Jayden's innate crit opportunity really isn't anything at all to write home about. His dex as well was at a below average level, so it's definitely not going to be any kind of guarantee that you're actually going to be able to get this heal back off. And considering that that's the only utility on this skill, I do wish that this heal back here was unconditional. Even still, assuming that you are able to crit, if you do lean into that in your builds, I do think that this can add a nice bit of sustain here for Jayden. Now last up is going to be Jayden's Limit Burst, and it's a pretty straightforward one here. We're going to have a range 3 blast style AoE radius or a half diamond. This one's going to provide a 38% pierce and peril. So yet another area of effect pierce and peril for the ice element, joining Aranea with that sort of capability. Now we do know that the general trend in the game as of late has been increased pierce resist on many of the newer units, and as well as many of the newer vision cards that have come through. So since it is a damage type that really doesn't have any damage penetration available for it, definitely always nice to have a skill like this in your back pocket. Pull it out when you need it. No other utility coming in here on this limit burst, but it definitely should set him up to do quite a bit of damage, and I think would make him a nice candidate to pair with other Pierce Job units in the future. Moving on now to Jayden's Subjobs, and we'll just sort of quickly go through these. His main job sub's going to come with 2 additional skills. First one's going to be TP based. It's an ailment ability with a range of 4. It does carry a 25% chance to confuse or paralyze. So it's definitely not all that bad. Jayden is going to be a unit that you are running at high faith to take advantage of that magic scale damage. So when you have 2 different roles there at status effects, maybe something that could be nice if he's run out of AP and not quite in range to use a normal attack, or maybe get in those evade matchups. As we did mention, Jayden's accuracy is just at an average level. The second skill here is going to be a 3x3 block area of effect. It's going to carry a large 220% modifier. Now this skill I do believe is actually a jump-based skill, as it does carry a cast time on there. It is particularly expensive though at a 36 AP cost. But again, I think this one could be another decent one for manual play, as it will help keep him in the air, maybe as you're making an engagement on an opponent. Now Jayden will also be getting Grimoire Keeper. I think that he is getting most of the best skills from that job here in the sub, including Unhappy Ending, which does give him access to a guaranteed hit. He is getting Archaic Healing here as well, which will allow him to mix in a little bit of support and heal up his teammates. As a bruiser type unit, I do also like attritional protection here as well, to kind of give him that protect status that he can layer on top of that physical barrier that we looked at earlier. Jayden will be getting the Cleric sub-job as well. Maybe could be interesting, for some manual content if maybe you wanted that light or dark veil for the team. Otherwise though, I think in most cases I'm going to go with Grimoire Keeper, maybe even his own sub-job for some niche scenarios. Now, as we did allude to there, Jayden of course is going to be part of that spear weapon group, which at this point has just a ton of units and is definitely one of the most populated ones out of all the weapon groups. Now recently here on Global we did get Dialdo, which does give the group as well a nice frontline tank that you could mix in there if you were trying to go for a pure rainbow team. The card support though for the group is very, very solid. We have all of the major effects here covered if we are looking up through JP's timeline. So I definitely consider this group one of the better ones that has been developed so far. I'm not sure if it's enough that we'll see any kind of Pierce meta, but I think that you could certainly do a lot with what's available here. Now there was a new spear weapon that debuted alongside Jayden, and here is the Horn of Glory. And this one is another magic spear option. This one is going to be providing that 15 pierce attack passive for anyone that's able to equip it. And then it does have that conditional effect for ice units only. It's going to be a defensive focus passive here, which will provide 10% resistance against wind, light, and dark elements. So pretty unique to kind of get that sort of effect here on the weapon slots. And it will stack very nicely for Jayden with that all element resist passive that we did look at earlier. All right guys, here is a mock build that I put together for Jayden. And the idea this week is to sort of build on that innate elemental strength and sort of make a versatile attack team here that will excel against multiple other elements. Of course, for something like Guild War, we don't know exactly what we're going to be facing on a day-to-day basis. So having something that's versatile that can sort of attack and do well against multiple different elements is certainly a very nice strength to have. So sort of building off Jayden's natural capabilities there, this team is going to excel versus dark, wind, light, and maybe even a bit of ice as well if we do factor in Reagan's fire tech and the element resist party buff that he does have. So we're going to be potentially covering at least 4 of the 8 elements here, maybe even more, not too shabby. In terms of the equipment that we'll be using here, we're going to definitely be using that new spear that we looked at. I'm going to be pairing that with the Genji glove for the damage increase, and then a self-haste TMR. In this case, I have Bradley's, but there are going to be a couple of others available, including Ferris and Bronwell. For an Esper, we're going to be going with Dark Shiva. This one will be coming, probably maybe a week or 2 weeks after Jayden comes here for Global. Who knows, though? Maybe they'll even put it out the same week. We'll just have to see what happens. But that one is definitely tailor-made for Jayden and that Ice and Pierce Attack magic combo. But it's going to work great on him, though. It has some nice unique nodes in there, including some additional area resist, as well as that flat magic percent up that does come in there as well. We will be using that Dark Shiva Vision card there on top of that for the party agility. And then I'm going to be pairing that with Dark Odin for the unit resist, Mana Pool for the area resistance. I do know that a lot of people missed out on that last card. If you did, you can always throw in Death Machine or Holiday Party, here into the build instead. To round out the party and the sub slots, we're going to bring in Freezes for the HP, Snow's Vision card for the wind resistance, and then the Laswell card for even more agility. For the Trust Stones in the build, we're going to have a pretty straightforward setup here with the HP and agility sets. Of course, that HP set does bring on that 5% all element resistance. Now, normally I might have some individual element resists kind of built up here in the passives as well, but 3 of them that we do want to cover in this build are already covered on our weapons. So I have gone for some other defensive effects here. I do particularly like slash resistance on Jayden since he does bring in that debuff for slash res pen that we looked at earlier. On the offensive side, I'm just bringing in some passives here to sort of round out his offensive capability with the Spirit Pen, Magic Up, as well as that Ice Attack and Pierce Res penetration. I do think that acquired AP, certainly you want to stack that up on him because he could run into some AP issues here. He doesn't really have any kind of innate AP management. I do like the Grimoire Keeper sub-job on him as well, so skill activation reduction I think is very important if you are going to leverage that sub. So that is the build, guys. As you can see here in the stats, pretty bulky, of course, against winds, but he's also going to be packing in a decent amount of dark and light resistance on top of that. Of course, if you did want to trade out a little bit of damage, you could take away that Genji glove and put an Alex ring in there and get even more all-element resistance. As always, though, if you do want to take a closer look at the build, I will go ahead and put a link to it in the description below. So what is my verdict today on Jayden? Starting with the positives, Jayden is going to be bringing in that unique hate lowering mechanic, capable of dropping even the previously untouchable innate hate mechanic that many tanks out there do have today. And that's going to allow your team to subvert that tank and go for the backline instead. Now on top of that, Jayden should be a relatively capable and flexible bruiser, coming in with that all-element resistance, a decent amount of area resist, that thick 10,000 HP physical barrier, and even some debuff weakening and a healthy dose of crit evasion on top of that. He will also excel particularly against slash damage foes, where he's going to bring in not only a strong innate resistance, but the ability to debuff those enemies slash res penetration. He's definitely not all about the mitigation though. He does have the damage to back it up, being a unit capable of some nice long range on his arcing attacks, bringing in that still relatively unique magic pierce damage combination. And he's not really lacking when it comes to utility either. He's going to be bringing in that lethal 38% Imperil on the limit burst, magic barrier break, 50% healing down, and even re-raise removal, all the while finding a home in a strong ice element and pierce weapon group. On the flip side, although Jayden's 10,000 HP barrier sounds impressive, he will be susceptible to the bevy of barrier breaks that have been implemented into the game, and he'll need to rely on that elemental resistance to help bail him out. As we did see in the stats overview, he is a unit that does have a few deficiencies as well in his base statistics, including some important areas like hit points, accuracy, and agility. Although he does have some ways that he can mitigate those particular areas with his passives and a guaranteed hit skill. He is also bringing in 2 innate damage weaknesses, including a large 10% weakness against magic, which will definitely represent the best way to get at this unit and take him down quickly. This is also a unit that you will definitely need to factor in some sort of AP management, and for many folks out there may even be Aziz's Bell's unit. At the end of the day, although Jayden's innate hate lowering mechanic is unique in the game, there are certainly some ways that you are able to work around it, including hate down on your other units. And that's not even factoring in that it's not a guarantee that he'll even use that skill in every battle, as he does have other area of effect attacks that he may prefer, depending on the scenario. So at least based off of the results that we've seen so far over in JP, it hasn't been quite as dominating or a disruptive factor as some initially thought when it was first unveiled. Despite that though, I think that there's definitely a lot to like with this unit. I think that he is going to be a strong unit worthy of that 100 cost, just perhaps not a meta-defining one. So I think considering the fact that Jayden is a permanent pool unit and that we are experiencing a unit crunch right now in global, if there are other options that you're interested in, particularly limited time ones, I think that this is one that you could potentially skip over and hope to pick up down the road. So there it is, guys. That is my look into this new version of Jayden. We're not quite done with the anniversary units yet. I think the next episode is going to be quite anticipated. We're going to be digging into Bridal Alaya next. Now, if you are a veteran watcher here on the channel, you might have noticed a couple of omissions from the presentation today, particularly the anticipated schedule section. Obviously, we did have that announcement about the worldwide version here for global, which essentially is putting our crystal ball of the future onto the chopping block. That, of course, is going to be difficult to get used to here for us, but certainly for my channel, that is something that I have relied on to bring you guys content. So I do plan on making sort of a channel update video here, kind of reaching out to you guys for feedback and ideas on kind of the direction that I should take my channel going forward. Aside from that though, guys, hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know your thoughts. While you're down there, if you enjoyed the video today, hit that like button for me. It really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm. And if you like what I'm doing here on the channel, hit that subscribe button if you want to see more. And that's really all that I have to say for today. So as always, stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.